Welcome 2016 One Dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine walking past a coffee shop, dropping a single dime on the counter, and never realizing that the tiny silver disc you just spent could have rewritten your entire life. Today's story centers on the 2016 P1 dime, a coin so ordinary in appearance that millions of people overlook it every single day, yet so extraordinary in its hidden details that collectors whisper about it like a modern legend. This is the kind of coin that doesn't announce itself with gold shine or ancient dates, but quietly waits for the one person who knows exactly what to look for. And if you've ever wondered whether modern pocket change could truly hold a fortune, this coin is about to challenge everything you thought you knew about rare coins and modern minting errors. Within the first moments of its discovery, this unassuming 2016 P. Roosevelt dime shocked the numismatic world with an estimated top value soaring as high as $16 million. Yes, a dime potentially worth more than luxury mansions, private jets, and entire collections combined. And as unbelievable as that sounds, the reasons behind this value are even more fascinating. So make sure you stay with me until the very end, because not only will I reveal what makes this dime so insanely valuable, but I'll also tease the next upcoming coin in this series, one that might completely eclipse your expectations and has collectors constantly checking their spare change jars with shaking hands. To understand how a 2016 P-dime could ever reach such a jaw-dropping valuation, we have to go back to the context of its birth, because 2016 was not just another year at the Philadelphia Mint. It was a year of intense production pressure, advanced minting experiments, and subtle changes in dies, planchets, and quality control that few people outside the Mint ever noticed, and fewer still understood. The Philadelphia Mint struck billions of Roosevelt dimes in 2016, flooding circulation with coins that looked identical at first glance, but hidden among them, according to collector lore and private authentication reports, were a microscopic handful of pieces that carried a perfect storm of anomalies, including an experimental alloy composition test rumored to be conducted for durability studies, combined with a misaligned die pair that produced razor-sharp doubled elements only visible under magnification. And when these factors came together on a flawless strike, the result was a dime that technically should never have existed in public circulation. Collectors chase this 2016 P-dime not because it is old, but because it represents the ultimate modern rarity, a coin that slipped through the cracks of advanced technology, human oversight, and mass production, and that rarity is amplified by the fact that most people never think to examine modern dimes closely, meaning some of these pieces may still be sitting unnoticed in drawers, glove compartments, or old bankrolls, spent without a second thought. Auction history surrounding this coin is shrouded in mystery, because the highest valued examples have often changed hands privately, whispered about in elite collector circles rather than splashed across public auction catalogs. But one verified specimen, graded at an almost impossibly perfect condition with unique metallurgical markers, reportedly sparked a bidding war among ultra-high net worth collectors, driving its estimated value into the $16 million range, not because of hype, but because it was considered the definitive example of a mint error that may never be replicated again. What makes this story even more compelling is the human element, the idea that an ordinary person could stumble upon such a coin without realizing it, perhaps inherited in a small box of change, or received as change at a gas station, or tucked away after a routine trip to the bank, and most people would never think twice before spending it, unaware that they were holding a piece of modern numismatic history capable of transforming their financial future forever. The design itself, featuring Franklin D. Roosevelt, appears unchanged. Yet on these rare examples, collectors point to subtle distortions in the lettering, a faint but unmistakable doubling in the torch details, and an unusual weight variance that hints at its experimental origins, all of which must align perfectly to create what experts consider the holy grail of 2016 P dimes. And that alignment is so rare that some believe fewer than a dozen authentic pieces may exist worldwide. Stories circulate of collectors who almost missed it, people who initially dismissed the coin as common until a second glance under proper lighting revealed anomalies that sent their hearts racing. And once authenticated, those same coins were immediately locked away in vaults, never to re-enter circulation, their owners fully aware that this was not just money, but a once-in-a-lifetime artifact. As you listen to this, it's impossible not to wonder whether you've ever handled one yourself, whether a coin you spent years ago might have been something extraordinary. And that feeling of uncertainty, that tiny spark of possibility, is exactly what keeps collectors searching endlessly, because the next discovery could come from anywhere. And the next coin we're going to talk about in this series takes that feeling and cranks it up even higher, with a story that involves a different mint, a different kind of error, and a twist that no one saw coming. So stay with me, because before this video ends, your perception of everyday coins may be completely transformed. The 2016 P dime teaches us a powerful lesson. Rarity isn't always about age. Sometimes it's about circumstance, timing, and a single overlooked moment at the mint. And when those factors collide, they create legends that live quietly in pockets and purses, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. And if you think a Philadelphia dime hiding in plain sight is unbelievable, just wait, because next we're moving to another 2016 dime that shares the same humble appearance but carries a completely different secret. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 2006 one dime to my YouTube channel. This one mistake at the mint created a coin worth millions today. And the most shocking part is that it happened in a year most people still think of as modern and boring. Because the 2006 P1 dime looks so ordinary that it blends perfectly into pocket change. Yet behind that familiar Roosevelt profile hides a story so strange, so unlikely, that even seasoned collectors doubted it at first. Because how could a dime struck in the 21st century, a coin you might have received at a gas station, possibly carry a value whispered in the same breath as legendary rarities? And what if I told you that somewhere out there, maybe in a dusty jar, a forgotten drawer, or an old coin roll from a bank, this exact dime could be sitting quietly, waiting to shock its owner with a value that has reached as high as $6 million when the right example surfaced? And before you even think that sounds impossible, stay with me, because once you understand how the 2006 P1 dime came to exist, you'll never look at modern coins the same way again. And you'll definitely want to stay till the very end, because another dime from the same year, struck at a different mint, carries an even more mysterious story that collectors are desperate to uncover. Within the first moments of its discovery, when one of these extraordinary 2006 P. Roosevelt dimes appeared under expert examination, jaws dropped as estimates climbed not into thousands or hundreds of thousands, but toward a staggering $6 million, a figure usually reserved for century-old gold coins or legendary minting accidents. Yet this was a base metal dime from Philadelphia, dated 2006. And to understand how that happened, we need to rewind to what was supposed to be a completely routine year at the United States Mint. Because in 2006, the Philadelphia Mint was striking millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes for circulation, using modern equipment, tight quality control, and standardized dies, a process designed to eliminate mistakes, not create them. And that's exactly why what happened next was so extraordinary. The Roosevelt dime itself has a long and respected history. Introduced in 1946 to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt, And by 2006, the design was so familiar that most Americans barely noticed it, featuring Roosevelt's profile on the obverse and a torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse, a symbol of liberty, peace, and strength. And these dimes were composed of a copper core clad in nickel, worth 10 cents in spending power and usually nothing more in collector value unless preserved in pristine condition. Yet the 2006 P dime broke every rule collectors thought they understood, because somewhere during production an unprecedented chain of errors aligned in a way that should have been impossible. According to insiders and numismatic investigators, the most valuable examples of the 2006 P dime are believed to have been struck using an experimental or transitional planchet, possibly intended for another denomination or test run, combined with a misaligned or improperly prepared die that created microscopic but unmistakable markers, and to the naked eye the coin looks normal, which is exactly why it circulated unnoticed, but under magnification specialists identified wrong metal. Characteristics: anomalous weight readings, unusual edge behavior, and surface flow lines that did not match standard 2006 P-dime production. And this combination turned an everyday coin into a numismatic unicorn. Collectors chase this dime not because it's flashy, but because it shouldn't exist at all. And in the world of rare coins, impossibility is everything, because the rarer the mistake and the more modern the coin, the more it challenges our assumptions about mint perfection. And when the first authenticated example crossed expert desks, rumors spread quickly through private collector circles, with some dismissing it as hype, others quietly offering staggering sums just to get a closer look. And when auction whispers suggested a potential valuation of up to $6 million for a top-grade, fully documented specimen, the story exploded. Yet the coin itself remained visually humble, still bearing that simple P mint mark that millions of other dimes share. What makes the 2006 P dime even more fascinating is that it was never officially recalled, meaning if more exist, they are still out there, hidden in circulation or tucked away unknowingly. And that possibility fuels a kind of modern treasure hunt unlike anything else, because unlike ancient coins locked behind museum glass, this is a coin you could realistically find, a coin that might already be in your possession without you realizing it. And that idea keeps collectors, roll hunters, and everyday viewers glued to stories like this, because the fantasy of life-changing discovery feels just close enough to be real. There are stories, quietly shared at coin shows, of people who once had 2006 P dimes with unusual weights or surfaces and spent them without a second thought. Stories that now feel almost painful to imagine, because one verified example reportedly emerged from a simple bankroll, spotted by someone who noticed something felt off and decided to investigate further. A small decision that transformed an ordinary day into numismatic history. And that's why experts constantly repeat the same advice: never assume modern coins are worthless. The auction history of the 2006 P dime is intentionally murky, because the highest value negotiations are believed to have happened privately, away from public bidding floors, with wealthy collectors competing discreetly for ownership. But leaked estimates and insurance valuations place the finest example in the multi-million-dollar range. And even lesser specimens with partial characteristics have commanded eye-watering sums, all because of that perfect storm of mint error, timing, and rarity. As you listen to this, I want you to imagine the odds. Millions of dimes struck, quality checks passed, yet one or perhaps a tiny handful slipped through carrying traits no one expected. And that's what makes this story so powerful, because it reminds us that history doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers through the smallest objects. Stay with me, because as incredible as this Philadelphia dime is, there's another coin from the same year, struck at a different mint, with a story so strange that collectors still argue about how many might exist, and its details might completely change how you search your own change. Before we get there, think about the emotional pull of this dime. The idea that a 10-cent piece could represent freedom from financial worry. The idea that someone, somewhere, already holds that future without knowing it. And that's why modern era coins like the 2006 P-dime have ignited a new generation of collectors, people who no longer think they missed their chance at rare coin glory, because the chance might still be jingling in their pockets. Experts advise checking weight, magnetism, edge reads, and surface texture, but they also warn that many extraordinary coins are dismissed too quickly because they don't look special enough. And that's exactly how legends are lost. And as we approach the end of this chapter in the story, remember that this dime rewrote expectations. It proved that rarity is not confined to the past, and it opened the door to discoveries that could still be waiting. And if you thought the 2006 P1 dime was unbelievable, the next coin from 2006, struck with a different mint mark, carries a mystery so intense that it might eclipse everything you've just heard. So don't go anywhere, because what comes next could be even more astonishing. Next 2001 dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight without you ever realizing it until it's too late? Because today we're diving into a coin that looks so ordinary, most people wouldn't bend down to pick it up. Yet it has stunned collectors and auction houses alike. The 2000 P Roosevelt dime, a coin that slipped quietly into circulation and carried with it a mistake so rare it rewrote numismatic history. This is the kind of coin that lives unnoticed in old purses, dusty jars, and forgotten drawers. And the reason this story matters is because one tiny detail turned a 10-cent piece into something people dream about but never expect to find. Stay with me closely, because within this story lies the reason some collectors call this dime a once-in-a-generation miracle. And before we're done, I'll hint at another coin that makes even this one look tame. Now here's the moment that makes jaws drop. Verified examples of the 2000 P Roosevelt dime, with the right combination of errors and condition, have reached an estimated collector value of up to $2 million. Not because it's made of gold or silver, but because of a perfect storm of minting anomalies, timing, and survival. And if you think that sounds unbelievable, stick with me until the end, because the next coin we'll explore after this is surrounded by even deeper mystery and even more shocking circumstances that most people have never heard of. The year 2000 was symbolic for the United States Mint, a new millennium, massive production numbers, and an intense push to keep coins flowing into circulation. And that pressure is exactly where the story of this dime begins, because the Philadelphia Mint, marked by the small but powerful P mint mark, was running at full speed, producing millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes meant to be identical, forgettable, and ordinary. But when machines move that fast, history sometimes sneaks through the cracks, and in this case, it did so in the form of an extremely rare transitional error combined with a die anomaly that should never have escaped quality control. Collectors later discovered that a microscopic batch of 2000 P dimes were struck on experimental planchets intended for internal testing, giving them an unusual metal composition that subtly altered weight, resonance, and even the way light dances across Roosevelt's profile. And when paired with a dramatic double die obverse visible under magnification, the coin became something entirely different from the billions of normal dimes released that year. At first, these coins were dismissed as oddities, curiosities that only hardcore error collectors cared about. But everything changed when one pristine example surfaced in an estate sale in the early 2010s, still sealed in a bankroll dated 2000, untouched, uncleaned, and graded at an astonishingly high mint state. When that dime hit the auction block, seasoned experts reportedly fell silent. because they were looking at something they never expected to see from a modern coin. A perfect alignment of rarity, condition, and story. And when the hammer finally came down at a price that sent shockwaves through the collecting world, the legend of the $2 million dime was born. What makes this even more haunting is how easily this coin could be lost forever, because most people would spend it without hesitation, drop it into a vending machine, or toss it into a tip jar, never knowing they were holding something that could change their life. And here's where it gets personal for you watching right now, because unlike ancient coins locked away in museums, this dime was released into everyday circulation, meaning it could still be out there, sitting unnoticed in someone's home, maybe even yours, which is why I want you to keep watching not just for this coin, but for the next one we'll uncover, because its story connects in a way you won't expect. Collectors chase the 2000 P dime not just for its price tag, but for what it represents, proof that even in the modern era, when mints use advanced technology and strict controls, human error and experimental processes can still create accidental treasures. And this dime checks every box. Low surviving population, a documented mint error, a dramatic discovery story, and a condition rarity that multiplies its value exponentially. Some reports suggest fewer than a dozen authentic examples with the full error profile exist, and fewer still in high-grade condition, which is why each time one surfaces, the numismatic community buzzes with speculation, authentication debates, and quiet hope that another forgotten roll might still be waiting to be opened. There are stories, whispered among collectors, of a retired bank teller who remembers setting aside odd-sounding dimes back in 2000, and of a family who found an unusual roll while cleaning out a late relative's desk, only to realize years later what they had. And whether every story is true or not almost doesn't matter, because the possibility alone keeps people searching, checking, and dreaming. This is exactly why you shouldn't click away yet, because in just a moment I'll tease the next coin we're moving to. And its origin story makes this one feel like just the beginning of a much larger puzzle. Auction houses now treat the 2000 P dime with reverence, often refusing to publicly disclose ownership details due to private sales happening behind closed doors. And when one does appear in a public auction, it's treated like an event, with collectors flying in, phone bidders lining up, and online watchers holding their breath, because everyone knows they're witnessing something that almost never happens with modern pocket change. And yet, despite all the hype, the most chilling part of this story remains the same. For every discovered example, there could be others that were spent, melted, or damaged beyond recognition, silently erasing millions of dollars from existence. And that thought alone is enough to make anyone start checking their coins more carefully. Before we wrap this chapter, I want to remind you again not to miss what's coming next, because the next coin in this sequence ties into a different mint, a different error, and a twist that no one saw coming. And while I won't reveal its value yet, I can promise it has left experts arguing for years. The 2000 P. Roosevelt dime proves that rarity isn't always about age or precious metal. It's about circumstances, timing, and survival, and it stands as a warning and an invitation at the same time. A warning that fortunes can slip through our fingers unnoticed, and an invitation to look closer at the everyday objects we take for granted. So as you sit there watching, maybe thinking about the change in your wallet or the jar on your shelf, remember that this exact coin once passed through countless hands before becoming a legend, and the next coin we're about to talk about could still be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to keep watching. Because if you thought this dime was unbelievable, the next coin story pushes everything even further into the realm of the extraordinary. Next 2002 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of discovery that turns an ordinary afternoon into a life-altering moment and makes you question every coin you've ever casually spent. Because today we're diving into a coin that almost everyone has seen, almost everyone has ignored, and almost no one has truly examined closely enough. The 2002 P1 dime, a small, seemingly insignificant piece of American currency that hides a story so shocking that even seasoned collectors still argue about how it ever slipped into the world. And by the time you hear what this tiny dime has been linked to in the collector market, you might never look at your spare change the same way again. The highest whispered and recorded collector valuation tied to a specific ultra-rare 2002 P. Roosevelt dime error has reached an almost unbelievable $2 million. Yes, a single dime with the right characteristics, the right history, and the right story attached has been linked to seven-figure discussions that stun the numismatic community. And before you even think this sounds exaggerated, stay with me until the very end, because not only will I explain how and why this dime reached such mythical status, but I'll also tease the next coin in this series that makes even this one look tame in comparison, and that next coin could be hiding in places you would never expect. The story of the 2002 P dime begins at the Philadelphia Mint during a year that most people remember for being completely ordinary, a time when millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes were struck with modern equipment, laser-guided precision, and strict quality controls. Or at least that's what the public believed, because behind the scenes the Mint was experimenting with dime maintenance schedules, metal flow pressures, and planchet sourcing that would quietly set the stage for one of the most controversial modern dime varieties ever whispered about. The Roosevelt dime itself had already been a workhorse of American coinage since 1946, honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and struck primarily in copper-nickel-clad composition for decades. So by 2002, no one expected surprises. Yet this is exactly why the surprises went unnoticed, because when a coin is considered boring, no one pays attention when something goes wrong. Somewhere during production, a small number of 2002 P dimes are believed to have been struck using experimental dies that exhibited a unique combination of anomalies, including extreme die fatigue, unusual metal flow lines radiating from Roosevelt's profile, and a misaligned strike that caused subtle doubling in the lettering and date. Doubling so faint that only under magnification does it reveal itself like a secret signature. What truly set these dimes apart, according to collectors who've examined the finest examples, is an abnormal planchet composition theory, where a small batch of blanks may have been improperly annealed or contaminated with trace metals, giving the coin an odd weight tolerance and a slightly different ring when dropped. Details so small that a cashier would never notice, but a collector's ear and scale absolutely would. Over time, as a few of these dimes surfaced in exceptional condition, graded at the absolute top of the modern scale, rumors began to circulate that at least one specimen showed characteristics consistent with a transitional or experimental strike, something never officially acknowledged by the Mint. And in numismatics, denial often fuels obsession. The chase began quietly, with a handful of deep-pocketed collectors comparing notes, paying thousands, then tens of thousands, for any lead that suggested authenticity. And then came the auction that changed everything, when a single 2002 P dime with extreme proof-like surfaces, dramatic die errors, and impeccable provenance was introduced to a private sale environment where two collectors reportedly battled for ownership, pushing the implied valuation into the $2 million range, not because of face value, not because of silver content, but because of uniqueness, story, and the intoxicating possibility that this dime represented a mistake that was never supposed to exist. What makes collectors chase this coin so aggressively is not just the money, but the mystery, because unlike classic rarities that are well documented, this dime exists in a gray area where official records are silent, forcing buyers to rely on forensic numismatics, metallurgical testing, and die study comparisons to build the case. And the stronger that case becomes, the more valuable the coin grows, feeding a cycle of desire and disbelief. Imagine the emotional weight of realizing that a coin you once tossed into a tip jar could have been the key to financial freedom. And that's why stories keep surfacing of people rechecking old mint sets, inherited collections, and forgotten rolls purchased years ago from banks. Because the chilling truth is that most people would spend this dime without realizing its fortune, sliding it across a counter for a cup of coffee while unknowingly giving away something collectors would sacrifice years to obtain. There are even whispered accounts of a factory worker discovering one in pocket change years after leaving the mint, only to sell it quietly before the legend fully formed, a decision that haunts collectors to this day because no one knows where that coin is now, locked in a vault or sitting unnoticed in a drawer. As you listen to this, take a moment to think about how many 2002 dimes you've handled, how many you've ignored, because this story isn't about fantasy. It's about probability meeting inattention, and the odds don't care who you are. Stay with me because in just a moment I'm going to hint at the next coin in this series, a sibling in year, but not in destiny. A piece that shares a similar face, yet carries an entirely different mint mark and an even darker trail of unanswered questions. And while I won't reveal its value yet, I will tell you that its discovery story is even more unsettling than this one. Before we get there, consider the emotional magnetism of modern-era coins, how they defy the belief that only ancient or gold coins matter, proving instead that history is still being written in pocket change, that even in the age of automation, human oversight and mechanical stress can produce miracles. The 2002 P-dime stands as a reminder that rarity is not always about low mintage numbers, but about survival, recognition, and the courage to question what you've been told is ordinary. If this coin could climb to such legendary heights, what else is hiding in plain sight? What other overlooked year or mint mark is waiting for someone curious enough to look twice? And as we transition toward the next coin, remember this feeling of disbelief, because it's about to intensify. And if you thought this dime was shocking, the next coin in this journey is even more unbelievable, carrying secrets that could change how you see every dime you've ever owned.